So what I want to talk to you about is how are you going to translate, your passion for product, for community, for your team into actually being able to afford how to actually buy these things and make some money, right? And so Managemet One, we've been around for almost 40 years. We've worked with thousands of retailers, and I'd like to think that we've seen it all. We have seen folks renting storage units behind the store to store extra things. We've seen perishables that seem to never perish. We have seen people hold on to things that were in trend, out of trend, and then enough time has passed that somehow they're coming back to trend. So we've seen it all, and I just want you to know that if you are struggling when it comes to cash flow, you're not alone. This is, again, we've seen thousands of retailers. It happens to everyone. Quick show of hands, how many people here and in the room or even online got into retail because they thought that was an easy way to make money? Yeah, no one. No one thinks that. A little bit about myself. I grew up, my aunt and uncle had a store. My brothers and I would work in it. I think there was probably 2 or 3 too many times where I was doing inventory in the very hot and yet humid and simultaneously just allergy-infested basement where I said, I need to not be doing this, and yet here I am still in retail. And so, again, a quick show of hands where retail, grabbed you and you just stayed into it because it's in your blood now. Fantastic. Yeah, I think this is most of us. And I think one of the things that can be scary when that's your background is the numbers, right? We hear this all the time. I'm not a numbers person. And so today, I want to take you through a little bit of a cash flow workshop that we're going to do in about 25 minutes. So pardon me if we skip over or it's a little bit generalized, but I'm trying to make it as accessible for everyone. But I want you to feel like you have this, right? Like you can actually tackle this. You can make some progress on your own. I apologize. I've done this a few times before. I know there's always a lot of questions. You can email me. My email is nate@managemet-one.com. Myself or one of members of our team can help you. We're probably not going to be a great use of time trying to take individual questions. But I think the other thing I want to leave you with is there are a tremendous amount of resources, right? It's, Managemet One, we've been around for 40 years, but Faire, right? I mean, you just saw 2 great team members that are talking about, all the things they're doing to support independent retail. Colleen's going to talk to you about, and she works with a lot of great retailers about how to manage your time. Emily, after that, I mean, there is a community of support that's available to you, and it's really, really important that you raise your hand and you take advantage of that. Even, I know you talk to other store owners, either on the block or, when you go to market or anything like that. But it's really, really important. That's the other thing that we see pervasively are the people that get into the deepest trouble are the ones that are not asking for the help. And so long you had the courage to be a merchant, to take risk, have the courage to ask for some help. And so there are 3 general buckets of retailers that we work with. Again, hopefully you find yourself in one of these 3. It's, we're growing really strongly. It's feeling like a bit of a rocket ship because there's bumps and I'm not exactly sure, I can feel that. And I don't know how to keep that, party going, so to speak. The next one will be, and I think for those of you who've been in business, you've probably experienced all 3 of these at some point. The next one will be, things are pretty good, but I know that there's ways I can optimize, right? And then the final is, okay, this is scary and I need a fresh set of eyes to help me out of this challenge. And so I hear you, I see you, and again, as I said before, there's a lot of resources across, a lot of free resources too, so don't feel like you have to pay for help, but asking for help is really important. So if we dive right into it, this is the core concept right here. It's that cash is the lifeblood of a store, okay? And it becomes really hard to understand that because the systems that you're using day in and day out, namely your POS, but also even your accounting system, is not necessarily set up to represent that for you. And so the easiest way to see that is, just about every store has seasonality, and most of the seasonality is you got through the holidays, in January you finally have cash, right? Like that's generally speaking, most stores. That is a representation of coming in and out of a season and having that cash. I mean, obviously you had to buy it all, so that was harrowing as you're receiving that and paying the vendors. But then you're flush with cash. And if you're in those three buckets, right? If you're in the high growth phase, it actually may not feel like you generated a whole lot of cash, even though you just exited the holiday season. And you're like, wait, what just happened? I don't understand. And again, your accounting system will say, great job, like you've made a lot of money, and by the way, the IRS is gonna want some of that. And so the notion here is that cash flow is really, really important. And you can survive months, especially those low months, again, depending on what the seasonality is, of not having profits, but when you need to make payroll, right? Like that's where the rubber hits the road. Or if you're a solopreneur, when you got to pay rent, frankly, you should also be paying yourselves as well, but I'll get into that. That's what's really, really important. So as we go through this cash flow workshop, I want you to keep that in mind, is that cash is the lifeblood, okay? And so as we're stepping through these processes, these steps, I've broken them down into 4 to try to keep things as simple as possible. And I see a lot of note-taking, which is fantastic. And I'm seeing some comments as well about, even some questions. This is all being recorded. The Faire team is going to have this up on YouTube. You'll be able to access a lot of these things, right? So just try to stay as present. If you're on the grams, just hashtag present, okay? So we're gonna start with our expenses, okay? Because hopefully you at least have those are concrete. They're in buckets. And there's a little bit of a theme here where I talk about things in buckets, and we're an inventory planning company, so we love our class structure. But I think when it comes to your expenses, you're generally going to see these 3 big buckets that you can throw everything into, okay? We talked about payroll. Again, if you're in the store by yourself, you should be putting yourself in this bucket. And I see you not doing it almost on a daily basis. So I know you think, especially when you're starting, you don't feel like you can pay yourself, and that's fine. You're going to have, that's part of your business plan. But it is really, really important you make this financially sustainable for yourself. So we start with payroll. General rule of thumb, 20%. Rent, 10%. Everything else, another 10%. Why do we have those? Because the average retailer, again, we've worked with thousands of them, is around a 50% margin, okay? Obviously, it'll greatly depend on what type of store, vertical you're in. You're gonna play around with those a little bit. But again, what I want you to do is take an annualized view of your expenses and try to put them into these 3 buckets. And that will allow you to say, is it that my rent is really drowning me? Gosh, I have a lot of staff and a lot of help, and it's creating a great experience, but that's weighing me down. Or again, this will probably, hopefully hit home, is we're spending a lot of money to bring people, foot traffic or online traffic, and that's where it's really hurting. You should also think about if you have a predominantly online store, or if online is a big portion of that, the rent, so to speak, is that spend, right? Your marketing spend. So this is how you can bucket these things, and they interplay. And so if you're doing, I was going to say right, but that's not the right word. If you're planning these buckets appropriately, you'll be able to generate that 10% margin that we talked about. And again, we'll wrap all that up at the end. And so I think the next thing we think about in terms of a cash flow workshop for yourself in an audit is how are you going to actually inject some cash into the business to take advantage of all these exciting trends that the team has talked about and Faire is enabling, and you're hearing from down the street, or you have a friend, across the country and it's working for them. Holding on to old inventory, that's where you're going to become the most waterlogged, because that's the thing that you absolutely know is not working. I mean, the market has told you it's not working, okay? And so you want to take immediate action. How do you do that? Please do not start by looking at a SKU by SKU basis. You will drive yourself insane. I'm pretty sure I have a fair insight into a lot of retailers. You don't have the time to do that. Okay, you are all time constrained. Again, Colleen has got you there. She's going to help you next understand that. One way to do that is to run your inventory aging reports. Because we're an inventory planning company, we love a good class structure. And so hopefully you have, in Shopify, it's called product types. There are many ways in which you can bucket this. But you want to find where can you take some immediate action, and you can run a short-term, hard-hitting flash sale, right? If you can get wholesale for it, that's a win, right? Okay? If you're not going to be able to do even that, that's fine, but it's certainly not serving you, other than probably stressing you out because you're just hoping for the right person to walk through the door. That hopium strategy I have never seen quite work out. I don't know about you. The next one is somewhat, and I want to take a little bit of my time on this third step, which is how do you actually reduce, and it's counterintuitive, the amount of inventory I'm carrying by having a great flow of that inventory, okay? And again, it'll make sense when you go through it, but it sounds counter to what you're doing. Because if we all had a crystal ball, we all crave certainty. So we want that crystal ball, we want the perfect forecast. Mine's perpetually broken, so I never seem to have it functioning properly. But what you want to do is say, oh, what are my sales going to be throughout all the different seasons? I'm going to go buy all of that now. I'm going to go commit to it. And I'll just go work on the in-store experience and other things. I'm going to do training, and I'm going to set it and forget it. That never works. Again, if you're unique, please see me. I would love to know how you're making that work. Maybe you have a better crystal ball than I do. But the point of being able to actually reduce the amount of average inventory that you're carrying is by focusing on new, right? So this is why these sessions build on each other, is that the power of new inventory, that fresh inventory, that's what's engaging, okay? And so, again, this can sound like a contradiction in terms, but it's the difference between having sort of, your freshness and the newness in your store. It's like having a pond that constantly is refreshed with fresh water versus one that is stagnant, okay? And you can see that through, again, depending on where your store is located, how many visits you're actually having your best customers have throughout the year, right? I mean, if you're having 10, 12 visits a year, you should be up here, not me, okay? But for most independent retailers, it's 2 to 3 times a year, okay? And so new is the way that you have people come in and actually engage with you. And so the common mistake is that we hold too much of things, again, because we wanted that certainty, we wanted to lock it in, and then we didn't flow in the new things. We didn't take advantage of, I guess, red. I'm doing horrible on this trend. I think I have figured out a way to take advantage of the charms. I don't know. I need to ask my wife for permission. But I think that's really, really important, is that you flow that in. Well, what does that mean in terms of if you have new things, if you're exciting people, that translates into pricing, right? So what is retail? Retail is buying the right things at the right time, at the right price, and then selling it at the right markup, right? And I don't want to point fingers, but I know that a lot of you are doing a calculator on your markups that is not rooted in the willingness to pay of the people walking through the door, okay? You're not doing it on everything, but you're doing it on a lot of it, and you're leaving money on the table, all right? A lot of people, again, it'll depend on what type of store you have, will say, well, my vendors won't allow it, right? I promise you, if you sit down with me or anyone and we go through the system, you're gonna be shocked about how low the percentage of things that you actually can't change the price on. There's a lot of stuff that you can, okay? And I get every store is different, totally get that. But you need to think about how you're maximizing your own, what we call initial markup. That's your ceiling. Please do not set that ceiling so low for yourself. That will not help you. That is not serving you. I was on the phone with a retailer, what is today, Wednesday? 2 days ago, okay? I found them 5 points of margin in a class that's 10% of their sales because they had staff that was setting the price based on what it was 5 years ago. And they were trying to readjust it after the fact when they found it, but it's so hard once that's on the floor to take it back, right? And so I think it's really, really important that you as independent retailers think of yourselves as creating experience, okay? Emily is gonna be touching on this later on, so please pay attention to that. You're in the business of connecting, right? You're in the business of curation. You're in the business of, again, creating a great experience for people. You need to be compensated for that, okay? You know, again, if you're setting your initial, again, it depends on the type of goods. If you're setting your initial markup at 2 or 2.2 because that's how it's always been done, okay, please revisit that assumption. And I'm lingering on this because I see it day in and day out. I see it with thousands of retailers. It's really constraining your profitability, and it's really constraining your ability to actually flow the new goods in, right? The second component is if you're setting prices initially higher, markdowns become easier, okay? And so I'm not saying like, okay, all of a sudden I was selling something for $20 and I'm gonna sell it for $100 so I can mark it down to $50. No, that's gimmicky. That's, you're not serving anyone. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about, though, is when you're making that initial purchase, how many people in this room and even online got excited to open a retail store because they love the product that they're selling? Yeah, most of you, right? That's what you want to do. What is really, really hard for a lot of retailers is to ever fall in love with an item or really get excited about something and then think about that you're ever going to have to mark it down, right? Because we all think that magically that's the item that's going to have 100% sell-through. Okay? Again, if you're getting 100% sell-through on everything, please email me, Nate@managemet-one.com, because I absolutely want to hear what you're doing to achieve that. I've literally never seen it. And so markdowns need to be contemplated even before you purchase the item. So just think about that. You need to be thinking about that. It is a tool. It doesn't mean that you use it for everything all the time. How many here carry premium denim in their store? Women's denim yeah. That is a trend that has, that's got legs like a centipede, okay? So we probably don't have to do it on that. But for the most things, you're going to have to think about the markdown. And I think one of the elements that really prevents retailers from taking markdowns is the word should. I should be able to sell it. I should be able to have a higher sell-through, right? And then you judge yourself. And then you perceive the markdown being it. And then you start to mark it down to say that you're going to mark it down, and it's like 10% off to start. That's a great way to get someone to give you their email. That is not a markdown, okay? That is not a way in which you're going to be, going back here, availing yourself of what's new. That's blocking you from getting what's new, okay? And so you are merchants. I know you didn't get into this to be, millionaires here through retail. Usually people, the way they make $1 million in retail is they start with more and work their way down, right? So I want you to think about, you took a risk, you followed your passion. Part of taking a risk is realizing the loss, okay? And moving on and having faith in yourself that you actually do have taste, you're able to curate, you've cultivated an audience, a community. You need to be serving that audience and community by thinking about that strategy. And so, rough rule of thumb, again, very dependent upon what you're selling, 6 to 8 weeks, you need to be thinking about what's the markdown I'm going to be taking so I can move on to the next thing. It's all about extending the runway for yourselves, giving yourselves as many at-bats as possible. The next part, and I don't want to scare, again, the non-numbers people here, is how can you actually do a cash flow projection? How many here are doing an annual cash flow projection? Okay, great. I'm glad that some people are doing it. Again, working with thousands of retailers, it's definitely a little bit of a blind spot we see. And so what I want to do is try to simplify it as much as possible. We already bucketed the expenses into just big buckets. We talked about how to sort of work the flow of inventory, getting things out, making sure that no inventory, you're lighting candles and celebrating birthdays. That should not be happening. Please don't celebrate a birthday for something that's been in the store. You want to be able to say simply, can I ballpark this, right? Can I ballpark where, if given these assumptions, I can get to, right? And so what we can start with is, what do you think you're going to do in a given, we're here in June, what do you think you're going to do over the next 12 months? You have the last 12 months, give a stab at what you're going to do with the next 12 months in terms of sales. And then you're going to apply that margin, right? And so why are we applying that margin? Because that's what's going to cost you to buy the inventory to do those sales, right? And so again, rough rule of thumb, 50%. It'll be higher or lower depending on the exact type of store that you have. And then you're going to go back to all those expenses that you just had on an annualized basis, and then you're going to subtract that. Okay? Wow, Nate, that's so easy. I know. You're going to fall into rabbit holes. Each year is different. When labor was going through the roof, that was really hard, right, to forecast what payroll was going to be. I would hope that most of you have insight into what your leases are and when they renew and when they step up and things like that. You can think about that. But if you break it down into bigger buckets, you can actually make some progress there. Rather than trying to think about, wait, what was my Facebook spend? And that's different than the Instagram budget. And that, no, you're gonna go, don't go into those rabbit holes, all right? Try to keep it a little bit higher level. That'll save you time, frustration, all of that good stuff. So if we think about where that lands you, so if we take $800,000 for a location, 50%, $400,000 in purchases, 40% times $800,000 of sales, that's the $320,000 of expenses. How many people here are running the store and not paying themselves, like the store owner and not paying themselves? Yeah, okay. I told you, I've seen this a few times before. You need to think about how you're going to work yourself into that, okay? You are not just the owner collecting, hopefully there's some cash at the end of the year. You actually need to be budgeting. If you're working the store, you are also an employee, okay? Again, Colleen is going to talk about time management, not just for you, but for a whole team. You need to account for the impact you're having. And again, if you're earlier in your retail journey, you don't need to hit this on year one. That's an unrealistic and unhelpful goal. But if you've been, as many of you are, have been in the business for multiple years, it's time to try to hit these marks, okay? And setting a plan to do it, obviously we're inventory planning, so we love when people make a plan and we celebrate that and you get your sales. But for you in the business plan, setting a plan is the first step to actually being able to achieve it intentionally, not accidentally, right? Because more often than not, Murphy's Law, if you give it the benefit of driving your strategy, you're going to end up losing money than making money, right? And again, I know you did not go into this business for necessarily the money or to be whatever, but it's super, super important that you make this a financially sustainable endeavor, okay? You have a passion, now you just need to make it sustainable. And it's important not just for you as the owner and your family, because they can see you stressed out, but also because you serve a community. You have employees, right? And so, not to heap more onto you, but it's a responsibility that you're already carrying, and you can feel the stress of it anyway. Planning this stuff out will allow you to get in front of it, will allow you to actually give you a better chance of achieving it, okay? So again, depending on which stage you are, this could be new, this could be old hat, but just that's how you can build in terms of doing a cash flow audit for yourself to try to, rather than have it be, I dread the day when my accountant calls me to say you don't have enough money for payroll, or now I got to dip into the personal checking to make payroll. This is how you can start to make some progress on that, and you're in control of that rather than it controlling you. And it's really, really important to make sure that you stay on top of that so retail stays fun, right? This is the number one way people burn out, is that retail loses its fun. You got into it because you have passion, and then the reality of the numbers starts to set in, and now it's no longer fun. It doesn't have to be that way, okay? And so do yourself a service, try to take some of these steps. If you scan the QR code, it takes you to our free resources. So there's work, and again, this is going to be online, so you don't need to do it right this moment, but I appreciate that everyone's enthusiastic. A lot of this is that there are a lot of free resources, whether through us, Faire is doing a tremendous amount. There's a lot of great resources in the community. Probably even another store owner has a pretty good system by which they're doing it. I got to talk with one retailer, Cindy. She always advises don't follow her system because it's so bespoke to her. That's fine, but if it's working, that's great. It's really, really important that you just carve out some time to be intentional about making this sustainable for yourself, okay? And so scan the QR code. Again, my email, nate@managemetone.com. If you have questions, myself or my team can help you through them. You have people in your community, other store owners, ask them. There's a lot of places to get these answers and make this progress. We have a longer-term cash flow worksheet if you're feeling ambitious and you want to plan out, each month, especially if you're a highly seasonal store. That's probably just the reality of what you need to do. But if we also have one that's a very simplified one. And so, you can take a look at ours and run with it, or build your own. Just do something. And again, you're spending the time worrying anyway. I know you are. I see you. You're spending the time worrying, okay? Worrying is not a good use of your time because it's doing two things. One, it's keeping you on Instagram or some doom scrolling, and you're not finding product. You're just trying to not feel bad, because I do it too. But two, it's actually pulling your focus. Like, it's actually making it hard for you to think clearly about solving the problem. And I promise you, it is a solvable problem. Because, again, we've been around for 40 years. We have solved many of these problems, okay? And again, Colleen is going to be talking to you next about how to find the time and the focus. But for anyone that is stuck around this worry of cash flow, just know that if you address it, it brings you right back into what makes retail fun again, okay? And so, there are always nuances, there's always unique circumstances. I signed a crazy lease and it's going for another 5 years. Okay, cool, we can talk about that. That's not the majority of cases. The majority of cases are, oh, can I see your business plan? What is that? I'm a retailer, I'm not a numbers person. Okay, fine. Can I see what your P&L looks like? The accountant hasn't done it. The bookkeeper hasn't gotten back to me. Okay, when do you close your numbers? Oh, once a year. Okay. Let's start to get a little bit of control. Again, don't need every single line item, but let's bucket it, let's lay it out, let's put it, God forbid, in a spreadsheet. I mean, if anyone is negotiating, I call it negotiating because hopefully you end up on the right side of it with your POS system, on how to do your buys, you're probably already in Excel anyway, or someone on your team is anyway, okay? Take some time to do some Excel. You don't have to do it all the time. The best practice is doing a monthly meeting. Again, if you're by yourself, doing a monthly meeting with yourself, treating it like a meeting with an agenda, with a set degree of numbers. That's a way that you can actually make some progress there, right? If you have a business partner, great. Hopefully you're talking about the numbers. If you have business partners who contributed capital and they're not in the business, you need to be talking about how to work you taking a salary because you're in there doing all the work, okay? That's an uncomfortable conversation, super, super important to have, right? And so one of the things I just want you to take away from this is that it's not hopeless, okay? And you're not stuck and you're not alone. Whether it's Managemet One, there are, again, other people, there are resources to help you. Please avail yourself of it. Please do not sit, as our founder still says, in sort of hopeless desperation, okay? That's a huge waste of time. It's a huge waste of your creative energy. And by and large, you all are creative people, and the world needs more of that, not less of it, okay? Thank you very much. Hopefully that's been helpful. I'll be around if you have questions. Again, email is nate@managemet-one. We just make it with the dash to make it as hard for you to find us as possible. But again, myself, anyone else, there's help out there, all right? Thank you very much.